Hi, everyone. My name is Devin. I'm a librarian at the Worcester Public Library, and today I am joined with author Tilia Klebenov Jacobs. Hi, Tilia.
Hi,
Thanks so much for joining us today.
it is a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Tilia is going to be an instructor for one of our upcoming writing workshops. She's the best-selling author of two crime novels, one middle grade fantasy book, and numerous short stories. She's a judge in San Francisco's Soul Making Keats literary competition and a board member of the Mystery Writers of America, New England. HarperCollins describes her as one of crime fiction's top authors. Tilia has taught middle school, high school, and college, and she teaches writing classes to prison inmates. So I have a lot of questions for you today. My first is you've written in so many different formats, novels for adults, a book for middle grade kids, and short stories. So I was curious if you prefer writing in one format over another.
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, they all have their pleasures, they all have their rewards. Uh, I think really the biggest difference is that if you're writing something that's book length, it's just a much longer time commitment. This isn't a weekend fling. This is a long monogamous relationship. And other than that, the process is really pretty similar, at least for me. I do my outlining, my character bios, um, figure out central metaphors, things of that nature. One of the really satisfying things about writing in a shorter format, though, like short stories, is just it's over quicker. You get to complete it faster.
That's a good point. So I noticed that you'd written your first middle grade book,
Mhm.
Casper and Jasper and the
Yeah.
Terrible Tyrant, so that your kids would have something to read by you.
Yes.
So inquiring minds want to know what your kids thought.
Ah, happily for me, they really liked it. My son actually one night refused to go to bed because he was still reading it. And he actually said, "Can I keep going? I only have about 100 pages left."
That's
So the one
fantastic.
downside there, and this actually speaks to what we were talking about just a minute ago, is books take a while to write. And by the time I had finished Casper and Jasper, my kids had pretty much aged out of my original target demographic. So in that sense, yeah, the meeting between the reader and the book was a little different from what I had anticipated, but they did still really like it, which makes me happy.
Yeah, that's priceless for a child to say, I only have 100 pages left. That's
Can I keep
fantastic.
going? His
So
sister
I
ratted
read
him out.
that, oh, pardon?
His sister ratted him out.
That's what sisters are for.
That's right. Gotta get this straight.
Read that before COVID, you like to write in the library
Mhm.
and that you miss libraries now because of the pandemic. So I was curious when you first became a library fan.
Wow. The first time I think I really became aware of how wonderful libraries were, public libraries, not just school libraries, was actually through a book that I read in elementary school. And it's pretty famous. You probably know it's called Half Magic. Um, and it's these four siblings, and there happened to be four siblings in my family growing up too, and happened to
Okay.
have the same number of boys and girls. And anyway, the setup for this story is that their mother is widowed, and it's during the Depression, and so she has to work, and they can't ever take a vacation during the summer break. So the kids always go to their public library every Saturday, and they walk over in a group. And I thought, now that sounds cool. At the time, we were actually living in Colombia in South America because of my father's job. When we came back to the States, I was 11, and I thought, I'm going to be just like those kids.
I do remember that Half Magic book. I think that was by Enright. I read that
No,
back
it was by Edward Eager.
in Eager. That's right. Okay. One of those E names.
Yes, Elizabeth Enright or Edward Eager.
So I was really fascinated that you teach writing to inmates,
Mm-hmm.
and I was curious what has surprised you about that.
Um, If I had to pick just one thing, I think it would be finding out that education really is everything it's cracked up to be. I have a liberal arts background, and of course, people like that are very, very into education for its own sake. And before you get, too high an opinion of me, I should say that this isn't just altruism on my part. I really, really enjoy it. Of all the different kinds of teaching I've done, this is hands down the most rewarding. To go from that to a room full of adult students who really, really want to be in your classroom, who are really eager to learn everything you can throw at them, who are usually pretty smart,
Yeah.
and who are using what you give them to change their lives and make themselves better persons. That's teacher nirvana right there. You can't, no paycheck in the world can equal that satisfaction.
Well, that sounds really rewarding, not only for you, but also for the people in your class. And it's a huge benefit to all of us, in the
Yeah,
end. It's really amazing.
it's part of being a part of this public safety system. And
Mhm.
I could never be a beat cop, or, I don't have the right temperament to be in the military. That's not my jam. So knowing that I can, take something I'm good at and not only, pop some new ideas into people's heads, um, people who are really eager for new ideas, but also keep, you know, society safer. That's really great. It's a really great feeling.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Moving on to a different topic, I saw that for the Soul Making Keats literary competition, you judged the religious essays, and for your background, you have a master's in theological studies
Mhm.
and an undergraduate degree in religion. So, how do you think your connection to religion influences your writing?
That is also a great question. I would have to say that it has a subtle yet pervasive effect. Um, if you are writing fantasy, which obviously I did with Casper and Jasper, um, the structures of religion and the structures of a fantasy narrative are pretty much identical. And so if you think about, well, the best place to look actually would be Joseph Campbell's very famous book, Hero of a Thousand Faces, right?
It's
And
fantastic.
that's fantasy. And you probably know that in that book, he actually has a drawing that is an outline of the monomyth of the hero's return and the adventures and how a hero's journey goes. George Lucas read Hero with a Thousand Faces before he wrote Star Wars. It was very clear that, he said that he would never finished writing Star Wars if it hadn't been for that book, because it tells you how to do it. And that book is about religion and stories about mythology. Of course, mythology is just religion that has lost its audience. And so, in that sense, there was a very direct connection. For my first book, um, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, part of the reason I wrote that was because, well, I don't want to give too much away. I'll just say that that book doesn't stop when the crime is solved, because most crime novels do. And to me, I very often find myself thinking, okay, then what? Let's say that there was a murder or a kidnapping or whatever. And to me, if something like that had happened to you, you'd be walking around with that for the rest of your life. So, and we all walk around in aftermath. That's life. All of us are carrying around large bags full of aftermath that we drag along with us. Um, so yeah, I was thinking, let's imagine you were, kidnapped, and okay, and then it's over. Well, how would that affect you? How would that affect your relationships? How would it affect, how you deal with your children? How would it affect you seriously in terms of your spirituality?
Okay, well, it seems like you're very proactive, promoting yourself, your work. You participate in writers' groups, you teach writing to other people, you take classes on your own, And even I saw before COVID, you went to the farmer's market in Natick and were selling your book. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for someone newly published, you yourself as someone who's published multiple times. Like, did you have to overcome any hurdles when you realized you had to promote yourself? Like, what would be the one thing you would tell a newly published person? You need to do this to get word about your work out there.
I think the big thing is that there isn't any single right way to promote your book, because if there were, we'd all be doing it that way. So honestly, I feel like as long as you keep chumming the waters, you're probably doing something right. I have a friend who writes YA fiction, romance fiction, and she's very shy, terrific writer, but shy. She's wonderful on Instagram. She has that fantastic touch where she can be online talking to, however many tens of thousands of total strangers and make them feel like they're having a private conversation. It's a real talent. I'm not on Instagram. I am on some social media. I don't use it very much for promoting my books. I really use it mainly for staying in touch with friends. So
I think you're
whatever works
really good
well is what you
point.
should do.
Yeah, why force yourself to do one thing if there's so many options out there?
Yeah.
That's a
Well, you
really
won't do
good
it for very long if you hate it. It's pretty simple.
Is there anything you'd recommend to our patrons aside from the books you've written, of course?
Well, that they should get multiple copies of. Uh, wow. I am a fairly Catholic with a small c writer. Reader. I meant to say reader. Um, I do know a lot of, because I'm in Mystery Writers of America, I do know some people who, at least by their own telling, they only read murder novels, murder mysteries. Um, I find that a little odd to restrict yourself to only one genre. So I read fiction, I read nonfiction, I read YA and kids books and adult books because a great book is a great book. So let's see. Books that I can recommend. Um, well, Isabel Wilkerson just came out with a book called Cast that is making waves. I'm only partway through it, so I can't really um, say definitively what I think about it, but I will say her first book, which is called The Warmth of Other Suns, is fantastic. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's the story of the Great Migration, which was the movement of millions of African Americans out of the Deep South into the rest of the United States, and over the course of most of the 20th century. And it's a book that I honestly feel that every American should read, at least part of it. Some of it is very hard reading because she doesn't shy away from things like descriptions of lynchings. It's not sensationalistic. She's almost clinical when she talks about these things. But the book is very readable, and it really explains a lot of what makes America tick, a lot of how we got to where we are, not just in a bad way either. So that one I would recommend.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Tilia as much as I have, make sure that you register and come to her workshop, which is on Saturday, the 19th at 2:30. She's going to help all of us struggling writers by giving us some ideas on how to develop the plot and do some character development as well. So make sure to sign up for that, and we hope to see you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.